Wonderful people, welcome to the Antidote. It's your boy Ryan Burden. We're a little bit late tonight. Thanks for rocking with me. Let's make sure that folks over on IG, you know how it goes, that they get the notifications. Super excited for the show tonight. Before we get there, gotta shout out the Indiana Pacers. What a comeback! What a game! We got to find some joy in crazy times, and right now the NBA playoffs are that for me. Tyrese Halliburton is showing everybody just how wrong they were about being the most overrated player in the league, in my opinion. If you follow me on IG, you can see I'm getting dragged for having the audacity to suggest that Angel Reese is a good basketball player, and lots of white men in my comments have decided that she's trash. And I got money on Angel Reese against every single one of them. So yeah, that's that. We're doing well here. We're doing well here. It's summer. We gotta love that. Tonight's show, we are going to be pretty focused on the upcoming 5-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. We got a great guest. I can't wait to introduce y'all to him. We're gonna give it some time for folks to enter in. Make sure that Instagram is working. It looks like it is. Here we are. We're over on the YouTube. So if you're on YouTube watching live, feel free to throw comments and questions in the chat. We are gonna keep it dialogical. We want to interact with you. So jump in there. Let us know. We'll do our best to answer questions, to discuss what y'all are talking about there. Also, we're gonna do our best to make sure that we get to catch some of the Wolves game because, like I said, the NBA playoffs are bringing me all kinds of joy right now, and the Timberwolves play tonight, so I do want to catch some of that. We're gonna talk about some more important things though. Again, this is the Antidote. I am your host Ryan Verdon. The Antidote is a weekly show we do every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 o'clock Pacific for my folks out there in Cali. We talk about what's happened in the world in the last week, and we dive deep on those subjects. We also spend some intentional time talking about what do we do, right? We analyze it through Barbara Love's framework of liberatory consciousness. So we're aware of things, we develop an analysis, we talk about some actions, and we talk about accountability. To make the world a better place, ideally. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guests. So, I hope folks have joined over there on the Instagram. Don't forget to like this, no matter where you're watching. If you're watching live, hit the like button. If you are catching this after Thursday, and you know you're just scrolling YouTube and you came across this, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to build this community. I'm pretty proud of what we're doing here. And so if it resonates with you, it means a lot to like and subscribe, and it costs you nothing. So please do that. Please consider doing that. Let's get to it, y'all. Let's get to it. So my guest this week is Jeremy Norton. He's a 25-year EMT in Minneapolis. He's an author, just an all-around really dope guy. So we're going to welcome him to the show right now. What's up, Jeremy? How you doing?
I'm doing well. I got a little worried with all that love on the Pacers that you'd absolutely forsaken your Minnesota roots.
Absolutely not. Listen, let me be clear. I'm hat tipping to last night's game, but I want the Knicks to come out of that series. I want the Knicks to come out of there. Like, can you imagine Kat and Julius Randle in the finals? You can't get a better win-win than that. I don't think, at least. Yeah. I don't think. So Jeremy, man, thank you so much for being here, for taking time out of your Thursday night. Why don't you just give folks a little bit? I gave a little bit of the introduction. I think it's always better when you can introduce yourselves. Tell these folks who you are and what you're doing.
All right, appreciate you. First of all, thanks again for having me, Ryan. So I'm 25 years I've worked for the Minneapolis Fire Department. I'm a fire captain. I've been a captain since 2007. One of the things that shapes a lot of what I think and write about is I joined the fire department knowing a little bit about what we do in terms of it. It wasn't only fighting fires, it was doing a lot of EMS work. And the more time I spent, the more I realized that kind of my background in liberal arts and teaching really informed a lot of the sociological aspects of what we see every day. So when we see people who are unhoused, we see people who have substance abuse issues, we see people who have generations of poverty. It's really easy if you're coming at it uncritically to say that's them, we're over here. But I'm not special. If I didn't have a job in health insurance, I wouldn't necessarily be doing all right. And so one
Right.
of the things I started writing about is that tension between trying to help people who struggle and trying to see, like, having kind of a radical creative empathy. And at the same time, knowing we're not going to be able to save a lot of the people. So it's a career steeped in suffering and sorrow and other people's loss. And so it's that balance between putting up a wall and then also maintaining accountability, right? And that is shit. I grew up in DC. I kind of came from an educated background. I went to school. I have a graduate degree, and I did not want to kind of go into lawyering or any of that. So while working different jobs, the fire department seemed like a good way to work, help the community, and have time to raise a family, which I've been able to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. You also found time to write a book, brother.
I did. It took a
It's an
while.
amazing book. Can you talk a little bit about the book? I realized that we didn't go into how much I was going to ask you to talk about kind of what you're
Oh, that's
bringing
cool.
to this space.
No,
But
that's
it's a
cool.
phenomenal book. Let the people know
All
what
right, well,
because
appreciate it.
it's
So,
based on a lot of what you're talking about.
yeah, no, absolutely. So I started compiling kind of. I mean, it's. I started in 2000 writing about what I thought I was going to be doing versus what I was actually doing, and what I'd started writing about was just scenes from before birth to after death, what we see, the way in which we have kind of a front row and all access pass to other people's lives. And I didn't want to write just about the blood and guts, which is what a lot of people do. I really, really was looking at us understanding the context, like what I call the sociology, small s, because I'm not a sociologist, but like how race, class, and gender shapes who gets help, the help they receive, and then who does the helping, right? And so the more I was writing about that, and then the more I started looking at all the ways that essentially structural racism and bias play out. This is a job that across the country was predominantly and exclusively, straight but white men for decades and
Right.
generations, and no one else was allowed to apply. So if you look on the wall, just like on a university, just like at a bank, all the faces of the old leaders are all old white guys, not because you and I are any better than anyone else at doing the job, but no one else was allowed. Uh, so I'd
Right.
start writing about all that stuff, and then I kept coming back to the systemic and the individual when we're looking at racial interactions. And so by the time I responded to the killing of George Floyd 5 years ago this weekend, I'd been on other death by police calls, and when I was a chief for a while, I was in charge of a district where there was another death by police call, and then the aftermath there, right? And so, oh, thank you, buddy.
Yeah, make sure you check that out. Trauma
Right.
Sponges it's a really dope book.
I can even do this.
Yeah, and then also, yeah, go ahead and do that.
No, we're good. But so that I'd already like I've been writing about that. I wrote about a what I called a near miss at Cup Foods in 2017, where
Yeah.
where a guy, kind of like a cat just caught a stray bullet, which was just life in the city. But then the way the police responded was so much more of a threat, and I was like, oh, this blindness is going to lead to something really bad. And it was like I almost led my crew into the cops shooting everything that scared them, and everything that scared them that day were black people shouting at them. Right. So then,
I've been in that situation in Minneapolis.
right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and this is what I was trying to say, no one knew what they were doing, meaning everyone was amped. Their context and the way their system is, and I'm a firefighter. I'm not a cop, so I don't, but I've worked on the streets enough to see the way the differences in our response models, right? But that they
Yeah.
kind of had this pile-in model, and no one was really. They just come in to swarm to help out, and so by the time we responded to the killing of George Floyd, I'd seen others, and I've been on other calls where the cops definitely knew they had killed somebody, and by the time we got there, there were 30 squads, there were investigators, the whole scene was locked down. That night, 5 years ago was not like that because they did not know what they had done. Like that.
So for the audience out there, Jeremy, you were the first responder.
No. The paramedics got there ahead of us.
The paramedics got there first.
Yeah.
Okay, so paramedics are there, then you get there.
Yep.
What are you seeing?
Well, that's there's a chapter in the book, and I'll do this again. Called There we go. There's a chapter in there called I'm riffing off of a Minnesota-based movie. It's called The Assassination of George Floyd by the Coward Derek Chauvin. And I talk a lot about the individual choices, the structural issues, and then the fact that there's a reason why this was such a hard prosecution to do, which is that we don't have a precedent in the legal system to hold police accountable.
Absolutely not. Right.
And so because of COVID, because of some other stuff, there was a delay. My station is 5 blocks away from 38th in Chicago. And so had we been dispatched at the same time the paramedics, my crew would have arrived while George Floyd was still alive. But for various reasons, nothing evil, just a screw up, we did not get dispatched until 10 minutes after the medics did. And so by the time we arrived, the medics had been there a minute or 2 minutes ahead of us, loaded him into the ambulance, and they'd driven away. So we got to an empty scene, walked in, and no one, other than the group of young people, bystanders and eyewitnesses on the street, no one, 2 of the officers were literally said, "What are you here? We didn't call you," thinking that we were there for a fire alarm.
Wow.
And I said, "Well, we were called for," he said, "We just need Officer Tao." He said, "We just need EMS." I said, "We are EMS." And he kind of mumbled something about drugs. And and under my breath, I was like, "Asshole," and kept going. But we went into the store because our whole thing was there was reported that there's one with a mouth injury at 38th in Chicago at Cup Foods. And so our policy is we go into the address and we look around. And so no one had said the ambulance already left, right? And I walked past Donald Williams, I walked past Darnell Frazier, the youngers. They were traumatized, they were upset, they were shouting. But contrary to the police narrative, no one stopped us, no one interfered with us. It was a handful, maybe a half dozen of young, upset youth, or under 30, right? And then I go into the store and I'm looking around because I'm expecting to see someone down on the ground. And one of the off-duty firefighter who is the eyewitness came up kind of out of the side and told me what had happened. But she was so upset, so distraught, I had no context. And so while I was talking to her, and then I ran into J. Alexander King, one of the junior officers in the back of the store, and he said, "Hey, they left." And right as he was saying they went away, but still not saying what they had, my radio and his crackled, and the paramedics said, "We need fire, right away, 36 in Park." And so we jumped on a rig, hauled ass over there. I still did not have any context for what was happening. I opened that ambulance door, and because I thought we'd been a call, because we generally get called with the paramedics or ahead of the paramedics, depending on the call.
Yeah.
So I had no knowledge that they had already left. I open up the door of the ambulance, and they are already, probably 5 minutes ahead of us in terms they've got the Lucas cardiac, the compression device going. They've got, they're trying to get an IV in. They've got his clothes cut off. They're doing all this stuff, and I had no warning that this is what was happening. And then we just jumped in and helped them do the stuff, and we worked all the rest of the way. Because I've been on other calls like this, and I know what generally happens. I sent my rig back to the scene to look out for the off-duty firefighter because I was worried that she was going to get swept up in either get a cop backlash right away, or I knew she was traumatized. I wanted them to help her out. Yeah. And then once we all left the stateroom and we were cleared and the staff was continuing what we'd been doing in the ambulance, I went right to the deputy, my boss, to say, "Hey, we are just on a bad call." At that time,
so you knew right away.
Well, yes and no. At that time, I did not know how bad. I just knew that this was someone who'd been killed by the police. There was not a gunfight there, and I just had to what the crowd was saying, which was more accurate than what the cops were saying. And and what the off-duty firefighter said in passing. She came by our station later and she had her own video, and so at that point, even before I saw Darnella Frazier's, I got a glimpse, and it was still like unbelievable to us, right? And so that's the long short of it.
I think that's a really important point to make, because I think people forget, and especially Chief Rondo just was on NPR and promoting his book, like, and we can debate whether he took accountability or not or whatever, but I think people forget that the official story from MPD was that this was a medical emergency, nothing to see here, right? But what I'm hearing is from medical professionals, you knew, hey, there's something happened here. I don't know exactly what happened, but something happened here that's outside the scope.
Well,
is that accurate to say?
Well, I think, Ryan, that this is the thing that bedevils me, vexes me, concerns me, that we don't have a context, right? There have been so many cases where somebody has died in custody, and the answer has been they suffered a medical emergency.
Right.
And I want to be clear here. There are systemic issues in place in terms of the police aren't looking to to throw themselves under the bus. The way that the legal system and the medical system work separately, right? And although a lot of the medical examiners are sit in the same office as the police, and so that what happened the first day or second day after Mr. Floyd was killed was the PIO. The statement came out, that standard neutered language. Someone, a suspect was being detained, sustained a medical emergency, was declared dead at a local hospital. That is like, you can put that on so many deaths that it was like, that's not untrue, but it ignores what happened.
Right.
And before a year before this happened, the young man in Aurora, Colorado, Elijah McClain, got ganked by the cops because some white lady saw a strange looking, young black man walking down the street. The cops grab, so much of it is how the culture in the system. Man had, young guy, he was tiny, had headphones on, hoodie up, or a cap on, so he wasn't obeying orders. They grabbed
and
him.
he actually apologizes to us, said, "I'm sorry, I just want to go home. Like, I'm sorry I threw up on you."
Right.
It's heartbreaking. For people watching, if you don't know the story in the case of Elijah McClain out in Aurora, Colorado, please Google that, see what's going on. It's to Jeremy's point, it's about as clear an indictment of the culture of policing as you can get.
But I want
if George Floyd isn't.
I want to build on this specifically though, because I'm writing about it elsewhere, but I think it was about 12 to 19 minutes before the paramedics showed up. And in that 12 to 19 minutes, the 2 or 3 cops basically did the same thing to him, to Elijah McClain, that the police here did to George Floyd, which was kind of manhandled him, bodied him, held him down, because here's the thing. Humans do not like being choked, do not like being crushed.
Right, imagine that.
The more they panic, the more the police mindset is the person is resistant. And I don't think it's a con. I think they literally do, like I've said, and I've written about, it's a training issue. And so by the time the paramedics showed up, Elijah McClain was hypoxic, meaning he wasn't getting enough breath, which means he was kind of hysterical, right? He put his system into crisis, or they had put his system into crisis.
Yeah.
The paramedics then came in and basically took the police at their word that this guy was fighting, and then because of that white, myopic view, saw him as a 6'9", 300-pound man when he was 5'4", 127.
Right.
So gave him too much sedatives. But the point I want to make is nothing happened at first until after George Floyd was killed, until after the riots. And then they reopened that case. The paramedics ended up getting more time in their trial than the police did. Right.
Oh,
so that
tell me the impact of that. How does that? What does that mean for you?
Well, for me, it means that we still, as a, like, again, the medical system, the legal system, we seem incapable of understanding the causal effects of tasing somebody, of holding someone down. So to get back to your point about Rondo, former chief,
Yeah.
yes, he testified against Chauvin. But had Derek Chauvin gotten off George Floyd when George Floyd went unresponsive and got the other two officers, because they, like, the positional asphyxia, two men on his trunk plus Chauvin on the neck, the trunk is what's stopping him from breathing and causing the positional asphyxia. When he went unresponsive, had they got off of him, they would have followed their policies to the T, and they would likely have not been convicted. George Floyd would probably have been dead no matter what. So
that was going to be my question. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, so when it was a big deal at some small quarters that Chief Arredondo testified against Chauvin, but that was an easy one to throw away because he did. But that allowed them to protect the department. But he did not. But that's what I'm saying. They still have not really understood the causal effects of that.
So that brings us really smoothly into another topic I wanted to touch on with you, Jeremy, which